Breaking news this morning. Prime Minister Carney is heading to Washington next week to try to find some way past the trade and tariff impasse with U.S. President Donald Trump. The Prime Minister's office issuing a statement this morning saying Prime Minister Carney will be meeting with the President at the White House on Tuesday. The visit, Carney's second as Prime Minister, comes as the two countries are locked in a protracted trade war and are negotiating on trade and security issues. Carney and Trump will hold working meetings that day. On the last visit in May, you'd recall, the Prime Minister sought to counter Trump's 51st state comments warning the president they infuriated Canadians. But earlier this week, Trump returned to that rhetoric.
We call the Golden Dome missile defense shield. It'll be the most sophisticated in the world. You watched it do well until they had some problems at the end with a little bit of a lack of ammunition, defensive ammunition, but they've got that taken care of. But I tell you, it's what we're doing is so good, and we deserve it. You know, we help other countries with it. We don't have it ourselves. And Canada called me a couple of weeks ago. They want to be part of it. To which I said, well, why don't you just join our country? You become 51, become the 51st state.
Let's now bring in Peter MacKay, former Conservative Foreign Affairs Minister, in this conversation. Sir, good morning and thank you for your time.
Good morning, actually. Good to be with you.
Let's make a start with your reaction to this news that's just come in. Prime Minister Carney visiting Donald Trump for the second time in a few months.
Well, I think it's always positive to engage. Difficult, of course, in the best of circumstances. And as we've seen previously, going to the White House, no matter who you are, there's very much a sense of volatility. And what mood will the Prime Minister and the President be in on that particular day? Prime Minister Carney has a big agenda item, and that is to get back to somehow normalizing relations around trade and talking about how we ensure the continuation of the USMCA. But as that clip just demonstrates, as long as this continued reference to the 51st state remains foremost in the president's mind, this is not an atmosphere that is going to make these type of negotiations easy, and it's something that absolutely enrages Canadians and isn't going to happen, by the way, actually.
True that, sir. The point being that the president, of course, raising this issue just a few days ago, and now the Prime Minister going ahead and meeting with him. Do you believe this is really going to be a part of the conversation when there is so much more at stake? We've been discussing this for weeks, sir, whether it's steel, whether it's aluminum, our auto sector. The president has now spoken of lumber, pharmaceuticals, etc. You think 51st state thing is going to be something they will bring up?
I doubt it. This seems to be a leveraging tool that the president continually brings up in public. I doubt very much, although I'm not in the room, whether this is something that is actually discussed in any kind of a serious meeting. As you've recognized, Akshay, the list keeps getting longer. The punishment keeps getting worse in terms of the Canadian economy and various sectors that are being hit. The president in that clip that you showed is also talking about missile defense, talking about the defense of North America. Let's be clear. Very important, something we are already doing in lockstep, cheek and jowl, with the United States through NORAD. This is an important issue. I'm hopeful, and I suspect strongly, that this will be part of the discussion. But the president sees himself as a master negotiator. There's this confluence of issues that he brings together, whether it's national defense, whether it's these numerous sectors of the economy, and it's the politics of this. I think it's obvious to many Americans now that these tariffs are also hitting their economy very hard. A 15% drop in trade, very a significant drop in terms of the number of Canadians who are going cross-border. So there is a price to pay for prolonging this state of indecision, this state of suspended animation between Canada and the U.S. on trade and our very intertwined economies.
So you did mention politics. So let's talk about the politics back at home. We know Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre has been putting a lot of pressure on the Prime Minister to deliver some sort of a deal. Initial dates were in July. We're a few months past that, sir. But with this meeting and the ongoing sort of conversation or negotiations that we've been having with the United States, maybe, who knows, maybe there is a deal that the Prime Minister comes back with. But the chances of something like that, and what is it do you think that the opposition will be okay with when the Prime Minister returns and says, this is what we have on the cards?
Well, you're obviously looking at how does the Prime Minister thread multiple needles in a haystorm. And I think, in fairness, His Majesty's loyal opposition is there to press and to probe and to push the Prime Minister to get results. Now, the politics of this, as we know well, goes back even before the election. And the Prime Minister was elected very much on the promise of being able to handle Trump, whatever that means, and whatever possibility there is to do that. In addition to being sort of portrayed as the adult in the room, the one who has this impressive resume, which is undeniable, and yet this has not really panned out to date. And in particular, of course, I have to point out that we haven't seen a budget yet. And that budget is going to be revealing on many, many levels. It will be a harbinger of things to come in terms of the Canadian economy, the size of the deficit, the debt to GDP ratio. All of these things are critically important to Canadians with the backdrop of a continuing and pernicious affordability crisis in the country. And so you're going to see the opposition continue, I think, to be quite aggressive on those points because they were election sales points that the Prime Minister put in the front window during his campaign.
Indeed. Okay, we'll leave it at that for this morning. Appreciate your insights always. Peter MacKay, former Conservative Foreign Affairs Minister. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Akshay.